Hello, vinyl community and YouTubers out there. Mazzy here. This is another joint venture video, and this one is about long jammy cuts, long cuts, whether they be bluesy, psychedelic album cuts or albums that have a lot of long things. It's whatever we want it to be. Now, I'm with what some of you, if you've watched the channel before and watched some of our jazz shit collaborations, I'm with Brooks. I did refer him a couple times as Jazz Shit Brooks, but that's kind of unfair. He's just Brooks. The jazz shit is what we talk about the music. This is not a jazz shit video. This is a just more rock and roll based. And so welcome, Brooks.
Good to be here. Here.
There. Brooks is in San Francisco. I'm in Seattle. Now, a little introduction to this whole thing and why I felt Brooks, I think Brooks and I have a good connection on this because Brooks and I were college roommates in the 70s. And we worked in a retail record store for a number of years together. We were roommates and we went to a handful of shows, and we used to play this kind of stuff, a lot of this music as roommates on the old turntable, on the old Victrola. It wasn't a Victrola. And here's where I'm coming from, and Brooks, you can say how you feel about this, but my first band when I was a kid, 12 years old, was in 1966, and we used to play a lot of covers, and we wrote a few things, a lot of cover of the garage classics and songs, you know, Louie Louie and Gloria and those kind of things. When 1967 hit, the whole psychedelic thing, obviously for me in San Francisco, the groups like the Airplane and the Dead, I started realizing, I remember one day in particular, we were jamming with our band and rehearsing, and we started playing For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield. And we just jammed with it. And usually we played the song for 3 or 4 minutes. And we just sat there literally for about a half hour, 40 minutes playing that one song. We started hearing on a few records, and I'm sure there's examples of earlier records of long tracks, but it seems to me around 1967, a bunch of albums started coming out with, in some cases, one whole side was one song, or 8 to 10 minute extended versions or variations. So some live, some studio things. That was a whole new thing. We realized we could play one song and just stretch it out, good or bad, for good or evil. Yeah. Is that how you kind of see it? Or
yeah, it seems about the right timeline. Yeah, sure. I can't think of anything before then, really, where it was just like improv rock, obviously.
Right.
It went on for a long.
And this thing came about, and now I just realized this was 1966, the album I'm going to show. This album sort of catapulted this concept for this video, and that's the Paul Butterfield Blues Band East West. And I just realized,
that's 66.
This is 66, so I can't imagine or remember anything before this. And what was so unique about this, it was a blues mix of psychedelic, of raga rock, a lot of Eastern influences. And I talked about in a couple of video I did the other day of how artists like John Coltrane and Ravi Shankar really influenced rock and roll and blues players. Like Mike Bloomfield started playing these kind of Eastern melodies. The great thing about East West, there's all these different parts, great harmonica bits that keeps continuing of Paul Butterfield, but the great playing and guitar back and forth as Elvin Bishop and Mike Bloomfield in this are just amazing. I think Brooks should talk about this because this year, just a couple months ago, I think Brooks, you actually turned me on to this record. So why don't you talk about this and as an intro?
Yeah, right. Interesting that this time this album came out. It's only listed as by the Third Mind. And the Third Mind is actually Dave Allman project. And many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Dave Allman. He's been around a long time, more of a roots kind of rock and roll guy.
The Blasters?
Out of LA. Yeah, he was in the Blasters. He even played in X for a while at one point. But he's been a solo artist for a long time. And it's very, very rootsy rock, you know, good, really good stuff. And then he, for whatever reason, we decided to put this collaboration together and put out this album that not only is sort of influenced heavily by East West, which he talks about, but they do East West. on here, as well as like Morning Dew, which, you know, is a traditional song, but the Grateful Dead kind of made it famous as a long jammy song. That's on here, and some other things like that. So it's a yeah, interesting album, and it's got, you know, it spans 50 plus years here, from 1966 to 2020. So yeah, interesting album.
Yeah. We'll apologize. Brooks's mic, it goes in and out of sync, so just bear with it.
Oh,
He
sorry.
knows what he's talking about. It's not his fault. You know, those
Oh.
people in San Francisco, they don't know how technology works, apparently. And they
I
don't, you know.
just turned it on.
Exactly. Anyway, so this is sort of the influence of this video. This we're starting with this, and again, I just totally forgot. 1966. I'm sure there are probably earlier examples, and I'd love to hear of them, and I might even own some of them, but I can't think of them right away. But that was a whole different thing where bands would start put out. Now there's a whole different thing about jammy things of one song, and then there's things like East West, or one I did not pick that came out in, I guess, 68 was In Hell 'Twas I, Procol Harum, which is more of a piece together of almost like songscape, which I didn't include in this video because it's
more of a concept album kind of thing, right?
Right, it's a
suite or something.
There you go. There you go. All right, so why don't you start out with your picks?
Okay, I tried to mix it up and not pick too many of the sort of things that everybody identifies immediately, because you probably know about most of those anyway. But kind of like that, I mean, I'll just, since we're starting in the earlier days, I'll start with this Quicksilver album. Everybody knows Happy Trails, their second album that they put out that has an entire side of blanking out on what the song was, but Who Do You Love?
Who Do You Love?
Right. Yeah. And I actually don't have that on CD. By the way, I only have CDs. I don't have LPs anymore, except they're the ones that are boxed up in the closet. So
we won't hold that against you. We're not. Yeah. I'm not a purist here. It's about the music here. About the music.
So anyway, this album came out like I don't know, 2013, 7 years ago, and I was surprised when I was curious, you know, just because it was from the Fillmore in 1968, but listening to it, it was like I would put this up there with the Happy Trails album as far as recording quality and performance and everything else. I mean, I was really surprised that something that was this good was sitting in the vaults for, you know, 50 years.
Well, these series, they came out on CD, and I have some of the LPs of that. These are from the tape collection of Gary Duncan that a lot of me took from the boards, from the of those tapes. So they're not bootlegs. He actually put them out on these indie labels.
Yeah, this was a legitimate release. Yeah, it wasn't
right.
Not a bootleg. Yeah.
I'm just going to hold this up at the same time, just because this was my picks, and I think I'm going a little more with specific cuts rather than the whole albums. But the key on this first Quicksilver album, the song "The Fool," is about 10-minute, and is amazing song. And as much as I love John Cipollina, and I just noticed today we're recording this on the 29th of May 2020, and just coincidentally someone just posted today's the anniversary of his death. Not that we always like to celebrate Cipollina's death, in 1989. So God, 31 years ago. Great guitar player. I always forget how great him and Gary Duncan's guitar playing. He gets all the notoriety with this band because he did an SG sound and that
vibrato.
He did a lot of back and forth. If you watch the videos, a lot of back and forth solos.
And actually, Gary Duncan just passed away. I think it was last year.
Yeah. But on the song "The Fool," there's a point in the middle or the last third of the album where he makes a sounds like a crocodile alligator, kind of this wah-wah-y fuzzy thing that goes really slow. Again, I guess "The Fool" would be considered like a suite, but there's something that's jammy about it that's kind of cool. Yeah. It's always been one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, it's a great album.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else is early? Well, I'll stick with something a little more straight ahead. Okay. This is the whole album is jammy, really. It's Derek and the Dominos live at the Fillmore. This was a 2 CD set that came out in '94, I guess, of Derek and the Dominos at Fillmore East. And, you know, obviously everybody that knows Cream and Blind Faith and everything knows that at this point in Clapton's career, lots of jamming going on, lots of long cuts, and there's this is full of them, and it's a good collection.
Is
One of
that
the things I thought,
is that different than the live album they put out way back in the day?
yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. There was that originally there was an two record set called In Concert, I think it was, and the cover was a picture of them standing out in front of a.
Is Dwayne on that, or is he dead by then?
He never toured with them.
Okay.
So I mean, they didn't really tour much anyway, but I don't believe they ever played live together at all. I've never heard of anything like that. But in some ways, and I mean, I don't have that 2 record set anymore, unfortunately. I don't think it was ever released on CD. But some of the cuts were better on that than here. Like I think it's got to get better in a little while. It's got some amazing drum intro and so forth from Jim Gordon.
Oh,
who's really great on this
Mama
stuff.
Killer. The Mama Killer.
Yeah, well, he had lots of problems, but he was a great drummer.
Yeah. Wonderful.
But I've also heard, and I don't know if it's true. I think it probably is that Tom Dowd, who produced these albums, I think actually, it doesn't look like he produced this one, but I'm pretty sure he did the other live one. Actually, did a lot of editing, and took out stuff and inserted other stuff, and so maybe those cuts that sounded so great on another album they sound great, but they're not the original performance either. It's a cut and paste job.
I'm not a purist about that. It's like when you talk about a lot, for years I had no idea that the Grateful Dead Europe '72 had all these studio, help overdubs, bass, and vocal things. I like the record. So what?
Yeah. So anyway, that's about all I got on that.
This is a bizarre record. The Seeds, Future.
Oh, wow.
And
I haven't actually heard
obviously
that one.
everyone knows Pushing Too Hard and those, really short, tight singles. They were on a roll, and they put this record out, and I don't know if anyone actually bought it. It's kind of a cool psychedelic production, some orchestration, but there's a song, the last song of the album is called Fallen. Now it's short at 7 minutes and 40 seconds. But it goes on and on and on, and Sky Saxon kind of whines and repeats, I'm falling. It's just kind of an interesting groovy. That's a good thing about this music. Ongoing, I don't want to say a drone-like thing, but a psychedelic, ongoing experience. And
that must be like 67 or 68, right?
68, I believe. I'm thinking 68 right now. Yeah. Anyway, someone's going to correct me. I should have known. I usually know this. I'm blanking out.
Okay.
I remember buying this record, and I think it's one of 2 albums. My parents, we drove down from San Francisco down the peninsula to meet my grandparents, and they dropped me off to see Planet of the Apes. So Planet of the Apes came out in 1968. So I'm thinking I got this that day at this record store in Palo Alto. And I just love the cover. I knew the Seeds from Pushing Too Hard, but it's a wild record. It's kind of collectible now. Mine's in pretty wonderful shape, but anyway, the Seeds, psychedelic, man.
Whoa, colors, man.
Yeah. Psychedelic.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess if we're going that direction, we can everybody knows this, right? This is like the reissue of Iron Butterfly, Inagata da Vida.
Okay, I'm going to pull. Okay. Part of the thing when I say these, if one of us pulls the same thing, we just show it then. So I had this.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, there's the original album, and this was a reissue on Rhino from '95. So
I have that lenticular cover.
Yeah, so that was sort of cool, and it's got like a live version of Inagata da Vida on it, if you really need that, and then a single version. So I guess the drum solo was removed, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of it was removed because this is 17 minutes, 5 seconds, takes
the
entire side 2 on the record.
So it's a classic early, long jammy cut thing from '68, I think. And
one of the greatest.
Anybody that doesn't know this, it's worth checking out just because it's so classic from that
It's
period of
so
time.
over the top. It's got such a
Yeah.
good thing. The story goes that they were playing this and jamming and learning it, and I guess they were playing it loud. And one of them was, I don't know who yelled to the other, "What's that song?" And he kept yelling it, "In the Garden of Eden, in the Garden of
Oh,
Eden." And someone said, "In the Garden of Vita," you know, and it just stuck. It's like those things that stuck. I remember Brooks was living in New York and I was living in San Francisco, and one of our mutual friends was getting married in Akron, Ohio, and we both flew in. I made Brooks bring me a corned beef sandwich for the Carnegie Deli on the plane because I love those things, and so we met at the airport. We're driving. Brooks forgot mustard. I had no mustard in my sandwich, but there was a rate. We found I guess a progressive radio station in Ohio as we were driving to our hotel, and they were playing the long version of Inagata Vita. So that was, I always have a memory of hearing this song my first and only trip to Ohio.
and that was like mid '80s at that point. '86, maybe something. I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But this is such a great record, and it's been used in the movie Manhunter, which was the first film, Michael Mann, the first story film version of a Hannibal Lecter movie. At the whole climactic scene, they go into the long version of Inagata Vita. Works really well there. Anyway, okay, I'm going to show Buffalo Springfield. Now, sometimes it's just a jammy version. This is that it's sort of a best of. It's an anthology. So what I like about it, it's deep cuts, singles, and a few alternate versions. And it has a great alternate version of Bluebird that just goes on this big jammy version. And let's see, it's how long is it? Bluebird. 9-minute version of Bluebird, and this is the infamous one with Steve Stills at the end, just singing and going, he's going like a donkey in it, and doing this whole jam. It was obviously a version not meant originally to be released, but it's such a great friggin' version, and it's really rough, and it just shows this great kind of guitar interchange between Neil Young and Steve Stills. I mean, Steve Stills is awesome on this song. That's a great single. But this version goes on, and they kind of go on and stop towards the end. Do you remember this?
I haven't heard that for a long time. I should play it.
It's such a great version. I have no idea if this collection ever came out on CD, but
I'm sure
maybe that's on one of the Steve. It might be in the Steven Stills box CDs. I don't know, but anyway, it's such a great. It's like
I'm sure it's out there.
It's like a ragged version, which is great. You know how Neil Young usually later on gets all raggedy with his stuff. And I don't think I picked any Neil Young, surprisingly, because he has so many records that go on and on long. So anyway, Buffalo Springfield, great. This happens to be a German pressing of it. Okay.
All right. I got the Byrds Untitled.
I almost picked
this was sort of kind of in that LA scene thing. And this was originally 2 record set that came out. One was studio and one was live. Both discs were good in their own way. The live stuff is some of my favorite live music from this period. It was just, they were so tight in this, and Clarence White, the lead guitar player at the time, was just on fire totally in this the whole set.
I think musically, instrumentally, that's the best version of the Byrds. Now, you could argue it's a different band, but it's a friggin' great band. I still think they should have continued on in a way like the Grateful Dead as a jam band with their hits, because you're going to talk about what's that 15-minute version of 8 Miles High or something?
Yeah, it's the whole side. One of the sides of the original album was 8 Miles High, and it's just an amazing version. And I believe it's a widely distributed YouTube video also. I think it's the same performance. Wow. Recorded at the Fillmore East. So you can just look it up online. You can watch them playing it. And it's just, like I say, one of my favorite live tracks.
And what's amazing,
live albums from that period.
What's amazing about it is that the anniversary edition, the live version the CD version has expanded, has more cuts.
Yeah, that's this one. Yeah. It's called, the original album is called Untitled. This one's called Untitled Unissued. So yeah, there's more live tracks, but to be honest, the original tracks really are the best live tracks of
That's
this.
usually
You know,
the
the other
case.
tracks are good, but they really did pick the best ones.
I mean, one of my all-time favorite Bird song is on the studio version, Chestnut Mare. If you want to hear, it's acoustic stuff, but if you want to hear great acoustic pick, actually, there's electric guitar picking of Clarence White on that song, acoustic and electric. It's stunningly beautiful. Listen to the ambient kind of guitar playing that Clarence White does during the falling part of that song. I love it.
Yeah, it's good. It's definitely one of their best albums, I think.
Yeah.
And it's
Okay.
definitely the best of that later edition of the band.
My next choice, I'm going to put two different groups together as one because it's my channel. I can do the fuck I want. In 1969, two great San Francisco bands put out their own live albums, and that's Busted Spinal Head and Live Dead. Now, ironically, everyone now knows. I mean, the Dead is the live act. They're all this great stuff, and it started with Live Dead. These are from the Fillmore West shows weekend they did, and there have been these box sets Friday nights, Saturday night, the February 27th, 28th, and I think there's going to be eventually another version coming out of. So that's the whole shows that this record came from. Ironically, though, Airplane put the live album out first, earlier in the year. This was later in the year in '69. And this is recorded Fillmore East, I think. Is it Fillmore
Yeah.
East?
Yeah.
Fillmore East. Now, yeah, a lot of people don't know or don't seem to get how great of a live band they were at this time. This is probably like 68, 69 was probably their peak, right, as a live band. And anyone could watch the videos of them playing, whether it's Woodstock, whether it's the Rooftop. Was it Louis Mall? No, not Louis Mall.
Yeah, I think maybe. Yeah, there's that Rooftop thing.
Rooftop, and this was like the year before the Beatles did their Rooftop concert. That documentary. Watch Grace Slick, how she stares and watches Jack Cassidy's bass playing. She was in love with his bass playing, and that rhythm section. And I'm still convinced. I don't know why. Maybe his personal problems. I don't remember all the details. Why they got rid of Spencer Dryden? Because what a great drummer! The drumming and bass on this album is stupendous, beautifully recorded. There's Jack Cassidy. This is probably taken at the Man.
Sorry, I was looking for this. Is the video that has that Rooftop?
Some of that footage, yeah. That's a documentary on Jefferson Airplane. But this record is amazing. It ends with Bear Melt that goes on for 11 minutes. They probably should have put something else on there instead.
I kind of like it though. It grows on you. It's not the greatest live thing you've ever heard, but it's pretty interesting.
And it starts out with a clip. You only hear the audio. They showed King Kong, or at least the last thing of King Kong, when the airplanes killed the beast. And it wasn't the airplanes, it was Beauty that
killed the beast.
And then they kind of start with
Other Side of This Life, right?
3/5 of a mile in 10 seconds.
Oh, right. 3/5. Yeah. Great version of that too. They're going really fast.
But again, this was jammy. And the thing about on this record, the thing that kicks it off or is one entire side is Dark Star. First live version of Dark Star, Jerry Garcia and Robert Hunter composition. And I think later recording, they all got a composition because was kind of in a way their first song that really morphed into all these other jamming things. Dark Star was sort of the nucleus. And of course, now there are hundreds of thousands of versions of Dark Star in the world. But these two records showcasing San Francisco live performances of the Fillmores are just amazing records. Nothing like a Dead concert.
Yep. Yeah, there's like so many Dead albums available now. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, live stuff mostly, that keep getting released, and they played thousands of shows, and eventually they're probably all going to be available, or maybe they are.
Tape traders, and now the whole internet.
Internet archive stuff.
Yeah, the archive stuff's great, but that's their first official live album, so it's always going to be a special album for me. That's the copy I bought around Christmas time, 1969.
So going to Southern California, there's been a number of Doors live albums that have come out. This was one of the, there was, it was the first live album they did, I think was called Doors Alive. Actually, I can't remember the name of the album. It had a blue cover, a 2 CD set, 2 record set. This one is very similar to that, if not identical in some ways, but you know, everybody knows the Doors, obviously, and Light My Fire and all that kind of stuff, but their live stuff was different. They really did get off on tangents, and they were into, you know, they had a lot of influences, sort of like East-West from jazz, you know, a lot of influences like Coltrane and so forth, and poets, particularly beat poets from like the Bay Area. They had a lot of connections with those guys because, you know, that was a big deal. And so, you know, they did a lot of their hits, so forth. They did do Light My Fire, and that was usually a long version with the guitar solo, which is on the original album. But also on this too is When the Music's Over and The End, which were, again, long versions on the original releases, but they go much longer in the live version. And sometimes it's just nobody playing and Morrison just talking or whatever he's doing, or
Ranting, yeah.
Yeah, ranting, and you know, it's just all, you know, it's sort of performance art, and that's sort of the way they saw themselves, I think, at the time, was
And those
part of a performance art band.
Those 2 first studio albums, I almost picked them and I didn't because I figured you'd pick a Doors album. But you know, The End and When the Music's Over from the first 2 albums were just incredible thing. I remember just how amazing they were at the time. They went on and on and on, and they're only about 10 minutes or so, maybe. And of course, The End.
Well, here they're like 15.
But that's different. That's
yeah. Right.
Yeah, and then The End, of course, also got a whole resurgence when Apocalypse Now came out. You know,
right.
The whole end of that, and I think it's on the soundtrack and remixed, and just that guitar, again, that Eastern guitar thing that Robbie Krieger's playing, right? That kind of.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he had a lot of influences too. He had the Eastern influence. He had the sort of flamenco influence that you hear a lot on Light My Fire, actually.
Right. There's so much. I mean, I've said this on a bunch of videos in here. There was so much influence for Eastern cultures going on with the whole hippie movement and rock and roll movement, and musically, again, Coltrane, you know, pulled from the meditation, the spiritual stuff that he was doing, and Ravi Shankar, and all these artists were listening to that stuff. So. I'm going to El Cerrito now. El Cerrito.
Right.
4 white guys, El Cerrito, and they pull it off in their own way, covering a Marvin Gaye classic. I Heard It Through the Grapevine, 11 minutes. You know, they're not a full band. They're not even a great band, but for somehow with their jammy things, even on the first album, Susie Q, that long version of Susie Q, the Dale, not Dale Evans song, Dale Hawkins song, I guess. I just love this version of I Heard It Through the Grapevine. And the guitar thing that that Fogerty does, it's not like great. It's almost staccato in a way. It's not loose like Eric Clapton would play, or even Robbie Krieger. It was almost like stilted, but it really worked on this version. So I'm going with I Heard It Through the Grapevine, Marvin Gaye song, 4 white guys from El Cerrito, you know, pulled it off in their own way. El Cerrito, by the way, is East Bay near Berkeley, California.
Yeah. They were certainly big certainly in the 60s and early 70s, I guess.
They were the biggest band from the Bay Area by far.
They had so many hits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like every album had multiple hits on it, right? They were top 40.
Huge singles. They built fantasy records, you know, after the whole jazz stuff of the late 50s, early 60s.
Right. Yeah, they built fantasy records, right? As far as
Yeah. I mean, the house that Creedence built, that building in Berkeley. Zans can't dance, but you can steal your money.
Uh-oh. Dropped a CD.
Oh my God, dropped a CD and the jewel box just cracks apart.
Not yet, no.
The spindle explodes and you're fucked.
So here's some more jammy stuff. And I don't actually have a specific cut off of this that I think is good, but it's Little Feat. Waiting for Columbus. Again, it was a 2-record set that came out like early 70s, I guess.
Great live band.
Yeah, they were great, and they were great. They were a great live band, and this is well, not obviously, but this is the only live album released when Lowell George was still alive. I mean,
Did you see him at Winterland with me?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I only saw them once, I think, and that was in Santa Barbara. So,
okay.
anyway, so it's yeah, it's a really nice, really well recorded album. A lot of the hits that they had up to that point, if you can call them hits, but certainly among people who are fans of Little Feat, are on here. And sort of like that Birds album, this was reissued on CD with extra tracks, and also like the Birds album, I think the original tracks are the best ones. So you know, it's nice to have like the additional stuff. You know, it's good, and they and also sort of like Creedence, they weren't really known for soloing or you know the guitar, you know, great incendiary guitar playing or you know whatever. But there's the whole band sound. What
his slide guitar playing was amazing.
Yeah. No, not that they weren't good in his slide and stuff, but but you're right. Yeah, the slide does stick out.
I think when that first came out on CD, I think they even cut a song to fill it on one CD, and then and then they came out on an expanded edition.
Yeah, that could be. That would make sense. So yeah, I don't really have a lot to add to it. There's no particular track that I would jump on, but there are definitely a few extended jamming things that are going on here.
And I love artists like that. Hold it up again, because I love artists that continue with a certain design. And Neon Parks, an illustrator, painter, that did almost all their covers except their first album that has a photograph.
Oh, right.
So Neon Parks did Weasels, Rip My Flesh as well, of Zappa, of the Mothers, whatever.
Here's Lowell George playing the slide.
There you go. Fat Man in the Bathtub. That's a great
version. Probably. Yeah, that's a great song.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going into the 80s now, so I'm not necessarily going everything in order.
No, that's fine. I was sort of trying to.
Let's get out of the fucking 60s.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to go back to the 60s later, so I'm not going in chronological
order. That's fine.
But this album, by Julian Cope. Julian Cope was a member of Teardrop Explodes, an English band, came out of that. It's not even post-punk. What do they call that? Teardrop Explodes.
New wave, maybe. I don't know. What's really new wave?
But you know, everyone's got watching these guys on the vinyl community. There's all these fucking names of like I never heard college rock.
I never heard that.
Now there's college rock. Now there's well, I know bubblegum. We know that kind of stuff. But then there's all these like subgenres of flower. What's the one? Anyway.
I don't know.
Anyway, I digress. Yeah. This is a great album. It's a very psychedelic record in a way. But there's a song I listened to it again this morning, and for some reason in my head I thought it was a lot longer. I think it's only in the 7-minute period, and it's called "Safe Surfer."
Oh yeah, that's a good song.
Opens up side 2, I believe. And it's got this great dueling guitars, and I think he might have overdubbed. Julian Cope actually plays the guitar, wah-wah, psychedelic. And it's one of those songs that goes on for about 3 to 4 minutes of the guitar playing before he even starts singing, which I love. And it reminds me of another song. This is, to me, the most obvious song. I'm going to pull this record out. It has nothing to do with this, but it reminds me of the same type of guitar playing. Is Funkadelic. Maggot Brain. Funkadelic Maggot Brain. Now, you never think that people would compare Julian Cope and Funkadelic.
I wouldn't.
Listen to Maggot Brain and listen to Surf Rider. This is the better thing, and this is probably one of the most famous guitar solo. It's not like anything like when Parliament was doing merging with P-Funk and all that. But that song,
that was a classic for sure.
It was a classic FM. It's one of those songs that it's 10 minutes, 10 seconds. When the DJ had to go take a piss, he'd put this song on, or Inagata Vida. And I think if he had to go number 2, he'd put on Inagata Vida. It's a little long. But these kind of remind me of the same feel, the same. This is slower and everything, but. Brooks and all of you are going to go play these 2 songs after. Find them on YouTube, play them back to back, and you're going to tell me I'm wrong, which I probably am.
Yeah.
There you go.
Wow, that's interesting choices. Wow, good ones. Well, actually, this is kind of along the lines of Teardrop Explodes and Julian Cope, although they came on probably maybe 10 years later than those guys, but. it's still that English, whatever you want to call it, kind of new wavy. Although this one, there's more sort of dance music, you know, from the Manchester scene.
It's a little Brit pop,
all those bands.
a little Brit pop, but not quite
Yeah.
Brit pop.
Yeah, definitely. But there's some long cuts on here, especially the last two. And this album actually, I think, has been reissued a few times where they added cuts and took them out. So I don't really know what particular edition this is. The original one may not have had these, but the last two cuts on here are like 8 and 10 minutes long, respectively. And not that they're jamming, again, guitar solos and stuff, but it's jamming, I guess, in sort of a dance groove. But they're a good band, or they were a good band. They only put out, I believe, 2 albums. And what's kind of interesting is this is definitely more like club music, I would say. And the second album was definitely a more rock thing, where they were almost getting into like a post Yardbirds kind of a sound or something, a much heavier guitar sound on it. And,
Stone Roses, you gotta love them. That's a great record. I have that. I love that record.
Yeah, it's really good. And so, you know, call it jammy, call whatever you want. It kind of fits in, I think, with what we're talking about.
Hey, we can do whatever we want.
We can.
Okay, I'm going to show a record now that Brooks and I love mutually. Brooks and I saw them twice, 30 years apart, and that is the Dream Syndicate.
Oh.
Brooks and I went to see them at the Warfield Theater around 1982, 1983, when this album came out, led by Steve Wynn. And they did a lot of long tracks. That song about John Coltrane, da 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 da. But the song I'm thinking of on here is "The Days of Wine and Roses." This is 1982. This came out on Ruby Records, my original copy. Steve Wynn. Interesting about them, Steve Wynn, and you can talk about that more in a second about Steve Wynn and all that. But they regrouped in the last 4 years, and since then have put out 3 pretty strong albums. And Brooks came up and visited me a couple years ago in Seattle. We went to see them in Seattle live twice in the same day. Once a small live performance at KEXP radio that you can see on the KEXP website, where you get at their studio. Really great. And then we saw them that night at the Tractor Tavern. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But Dream Syndicate reformed, and they're kind of psychedelic-y, droney,
definitely,
jammy, right?
Yeah, definitely. They have a lot of influences of everyone from Velvet Underground to I don't know, whoever. They were in a part of a scene originally in the, I guess it was the early 80s or late 70s.
Paisley Underground?
Yeah, Paisley Underground with the Bangles. And
another friggin' name I didn't hear from. I never heard Paisley Underground to maybe in the last 10 years.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. That's one I remember from the back then.
I just listened to the music. I didn't put a label on it.
Yeah. Right, but
I guess hate me, Masley. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, actually, this was a great live album that came out from that early period. I believe it's still available. It's called Live at Rajis, and as far as great live albums, this would be one of them. There's so much energy going on here, and I think it was towards probably the end of the original incarnation of the band. But if you're looking for a live album with club energy and everything else going on, it's really something worth looking for.
Cool. Right. Pick one more.
Okay. Well, we can talk about television a little bit. The New York band.
I pulled it.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, sure. There's their first album, which really put them on the map, and they were from that New York scene in the late 70s, and they only put out a handful of albums, but they're legendary, and they still perform periodically. Richard Lloyd, the second guitar player, they were like a 2-guitar player band. Tom Verlaine, Richard Lloyd. Richard Lloyd left the band.
Richard Lloyd's instrumental album is really good.
Tom Verlaine?
No, Richard Lloyd's.
Did he do an instrumental? I don't remember him doing an instrumental.
I thought it was instrumental. Well, as
he has several albums out there. They're mostly all really good, actually. They're a little more pop even than television was, but anyway, so this particular album that I was showing was a limited reissue, numbered on Rhino, and it's a nice recording, recorded here in San Francisco at the Old Waldorf in 1978.
Not
Yeah,
instrumental.
that's not an instrumental.
No, I'm sorry.
It's a good album. It's a really good album.
Great record. Great
Yeah, it
record.
is. And anyway, so he continues to put out albums on his own, and Tom Verlaine actually continues to put solo albums out on his own. And for whatever reason, every once in a while, Tom Verlaine will get the band back together. He has a different second guitar player, but not for sale.
Promo copy.
But I try to see them. They seem to play San Francisco a lot. They play very few shows, but when they do, San Francisco is usually one of them. I don't know. He must have some connection here. I don't know what it is, but he always sells out the clubs.
I don't know if I saw that Warfield show. I did see them when they were together at some point, 78. Television in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I don't remember what. I thought it was the Old Waldorf, but it maybe not. I don't know if it's that show. But Marquis Moon is the long track that I was going to showcase here on there. Like, that's 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a great droning song. That guitar riff. It's almost like, think about this. What does that riff remind you of? Only a slower version. It reminds me of the John Lennon Cold Turkey thing.
Oh, okay. I'll listen to that.
And then Paul McCartney's the one from Venus and Band on the Run, or his whatever. Let it roll. Let me roll it. You have no idea what I'm talking about.
Well, I can't think of the riff at the moment, so you know.
Okay, I'm going with this album, Rock and Roll, Lou Reed. Now, Brooks and I don't know if you pulled a Velvet Underground. We probably should have.
I haven't.
Okay, I didn't.
It's a lot of things I didn't pull.
Yeah, of course. This can't be all things to all people and everything. We did not pull Velvet Underground, and that would have been a good thing. Heroin is such a long song and everything. Now, I love this record. This is 73 or 74, I believe.
Sounds about right.
And recorded live in New York when he had a new band, and he has these two like killer guitar players, Dick Wagner and Steve Hunter, who would later go on to join Alice Cooper when he went on his own from the Alice Cooper band.
Okay.
But a lot of critics at the time who were big, creaming in their jeans over all Velvet Underground, thought this was too slick, too rock and roll, too commercial in a weird way. But this record sold, and this had a real cult following.
It was a big hit.
Big hit. That version of rock and roll, which I was going to say, has this amazing introduction that goes on again. It's one of those things, the introduction's on for 4 or 5 minutes before Lou Reed even sings a song of rock and roll. And it's like phase shifting. Sounds like it's going through a Leslie speaker or something. I don't know what thing he was
Probably
doing.
A pedal of some sort.
It's some kind of pedal before all these pedals were around. I don't know. But I mean, the opening of this that goes into Sweet Jane and Heroines, also White Light, White Heat. So long versions, but slicker versions of songs that he wrote and played with Velvet Underground. So I think some of the people, you get into a band, you grow with them, and then after a while, I think it's too commercial. So I think he got some, but he opened up and he got a newer following. So this is a great record. This came out after Berlin, I think. I think Berlin was kind of a failure at the time.
Yeah, right. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Berlin was after Transformer. Everyone thought, could Transform with Walk on the Wild Side was kind of a decent hit.
Yeah,
and a lot of radio play. And then Berlin came out and people had no idea what to do with it. It's gotten cult status since, but at the time Berlin wasn't very popular. But now everyone loves it. That's always how it goes. But this is a great record.
All right. A totally different genre. This is a San Francisco or Bay Area band anyway. I think they actually live in Santa Cruz or something. But I guess you could, if you're going to put a genre on them, it would be surf music, but this isn't like any surf music you've ever heard. And they've got quite a few albums out, and they continue to put albums out. But they're definitely a lot more psychedelic, spacey, jammy than your typical, like the Ventures or, any of that sort of kitschy surf music. There's certainly an element of that type of music that they feed off of, it goes in a completely different direction. So I didn't have any one particular album that was better than another, but this was a good one that came out 20 years ago, in 2000.
You
It
play
was a
that
good
for me.
one.
I don't have any, but you've turned me on to them. They're a little like the Sadies, aren't they?
No. Hello. But anyway, so that, like I said, Merman have a lot. They were a little more rock than, and they, over the years.
They're nothing like the Sadies from Canada.
They've gotten more spacey, stretched out their tunes a lot more than they were in the earlier days, where it was more raucous, and there probably was more of that original surf sound. But,
they're so much better once they dropped the first part of their name. Once they dropped Ethel, they've been really, really, like they really kind of just.
Yeah, no.
I got 2 left, so we're going to wind down. So just think about,
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm showing this because this is, to me, Eat a Peach, Allman Brothers. Allman Brothers are so great, so jammy. Live at the Fillmore one is incredible record, but this was the first one I got that had, it's part live, part in studio, and exactly. And the track here,
the box set.
I have the expanded vinyl version, which is incredible because it has all the Fillmore shows. That's a cover photograph by Jim Marshall, and it has the alternate photos. I think, I don't know if the CD set does alternate.
Yeah, it's probably the same as what you have, right? Is this a six shows?
Yeah, I have, mine's like 4 or 5. Anyway,
okay.
This is the one that I got into, and the song that I was going to think that goes on to 2 sides of the record is Mountain Jam, and Duane Allman, incredible playing, and Dickie Betts, and the song is based on the song First There Is a Mountain by Donovan. So Donovan gets a writing credit, rightly so. Great song, but the whole melody, that's the Donovan thing. But this is a Japanese issue of it. Doesn't really matter. But Obi strip. I'm not like a big Obi perfectionist or into. I don't really give a shit. Wouldn't it be great if like on screen I just rip this off? Of course I'm not going to do it. But anyway, Mountain Jam, and it's on the expanded Fillmore. It's on some live things. Amazing song, and it goes on sometimes for 40 minutes.
That's the Allman Brothers for you. Lots of jamming.
I did see the Allman Brothers and Grateful Dead together once. For a while, they were kind of merging.
Yeah, I remember
the Allman
that.
Brothers was getting into their jammier mode after Brothers, and even before and after live. I saw them twice. Once, did I go with you? I saw them once New Year's Eve at the Cow Palace. That one year after the Winterland New Year's Eve shows, when the Dead decided not to play San Francisco, the Allman Brothers played. They didn't do Winterland New Year's Eve. They did Allman Brothers. At the Cow Palace. It wasn't you? No?
No. I only saw them once, and that was actually turned out to be one of Duane's last performances.
Yeah,
they did a free show at UC Santa Barbara in October of wherever that was, 71, I guess. And it was like right before school started or something, and they were doing this free show in this plaza. So I went, and it was really good. And then like 3 weeks later, he got in his motorcycle accident.
Wow. Yeah.
That was it. That was the only time I've ever seen him. So.
Lucky. I never saw Duane. So
I can't say I remember it very well. That was 50 years ago. So.
You have one more?
Yeah.
Let's do one more, then I'll end it up.
Okay. Again, there's not one song, but this is a box set that came out. Was it this year or last? I think it was this year. It's Jimi Hendrix, called Songs for Groovy Children, a terrible name.
Winterland.
But it's a box set of Fillmore East concerts.
Oh, Fillmore East, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows the Band of Gypsies album, or anybody that knows Hendrix, Band of Gypsies. That album were 5 tracks taken from these. And other than maybe one other performance, they didn't play as a group more than these 4 nights at Fillmore East in 1969, 1970. And for some reason, they don't quite get the same amount of coverage as a group that the Experience did, which even though that members are basically the same except for the drummer and
Buddy Miles.
well, yeah, yeah, but at any rate,
No, that's
complicated.
why.
But anyway, this is a 4 CD box or 5 CD box from those 4 concerts, and it's some of the greatest jamming that Jimmy's ever done. I think really because
I've
the
been playing that a
dynamics,
lot for the last several
yeah,
months. Yeah.
the dynamics are just amazing. A lot of the his earlier stuff with Experience, like the Live at Winterland box and stuff like that, they're great, no question about it. But they're kind of all way up here as far as energy goes, and it's just nonstop. And it's which I'm not complaining about that either, but it was a little more tempered with Banded Gypsies, and it really adds a different element of drama, I think, to his playing and his thinking as a musician.
Buddy Miles is more of a powerful drummer too. I mean, he had a more
Yeah, and I think he
vocal-
worked. I think he worked well with Jimmy. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what happened there. They had some sort of falling out or something, and I know Buddy Miles was really upset about it because he loved Jimmy. And there's an interview with him that was done probably 20 or 30 years ago that I seen where he actually is crying when he's talking about how upset he was when he sort of got kicked out of the band. It was like such a crushing blow to him. But at any rate, for just a fantastic live album, anything from those is great. And there was a 2 CD set that came out maybe 10 years ago of highlights from those 4 shows. But this is like 99% everything. I think there's 1 or 2 tracks that weren't included.
Okay, well, I'm going to end this whole thing with a song that was an FM long staple, at least in the Bay Area. I don't know on the East Coast, and that's this album, the first Boz Skaggs album on Atlantic Records. If you know Boz Skaggs' Lido and Silk Degrees, you don't know. This is nothing like that, and it's probably his only album that is totally different. This is recorded at Muscle Shoals with all those Muscle Shoals. It's supposedly produced by Jan Wenner for Rolling Stone. I don't know how much he actually produced.
But Tom Dowd.
Well, I don't know if Tom Dowd's not on this, but it's got obviously Barry Beckett, David Hood, Roger Hawkins. So he's got the whole crew there, but he's got Duane Allman on here, and Duane Allman and Boz Skaggs is a great lead guitar player on his own right, very bluesy, played with obviously the first 2 Steve Miller Band albums when they met in Texas and before they came to the Bay Area, before they came to San Francisco. But this album should be on. If anyone likes the Southern sound, if you like the Allman Brothers, the bluesy sound, this is it. And the song "Loan Me a Dime," which is an amazing song. And if you want to see Duane Allman naked, there you go, right there. Amazing record, great recording. It's more of a rootsy record than any of his other records. He does a song "Waiting for a Train," which is the Jimmy Rogers kind of country bluesy song. So he does these kind of a couple of well, also "Loan Me a Dime's" a cover. Anyway, this is an amazing record and a beautiful recorded record. But it does have that Muscle Shoals sound. No, I don't know if Tom Dowd was in the room when he did this, because I can't imagine.
Well, he was a producer, but I don't know if he produced this.
Well,
I don't know if he did this. That's what I was just wondering. You know?
Right. Yeah, this says produced by Boz Skaggs, Jan Wenner, and Marlon Green. And Marlon Green. So Jan Wenner, really, he might have been more of an executive producer because they were friends because of Rolling Stone, and Boz Skaggs had lived in San Francisco.
I didn't know that.
The only record they did on Atlantic Records, then he goes to, there's a series of really good records for Columbia that are very soulful, white, blue-eyed soul and bluesy, and a great mini big band in a way of horn players. And of course, we all know what happened with Silk Degrees that just blew things off. It's more of a slicker thing, not one of my favorites, but all the power to him to sell records. So I'm ending with that long track. Loan Me a Dime. Great. And it's one of those build-up songs of great.
That became sort of his signature tune even later on, wasn't it? Didn't he still do that even after Silk Degrees and all that? That was kind of
every time you see him live, that's a big crowd pleaser. Even he does it more of a bluesy. It's always been a bluesy song, but there's a DVD of him, a video of him at the Great American Music Hall playing, and that's in the last 20 years, I guess it came out. So it's way past his peak, but he does those songs and he makes them more bluesy and more. He doesn't do the the slick thing like he did. I don't even want to say disco. It wasn't quite disco, but it was pretty up there, danceable, I guess. But so that's long cuts, some psychedelic long tracks, and we love this stuff. We grew up with this stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
Any last words, Brooks?
I don't know. I got several more things we could talk about, but that would be too long.
Yeah, we'll do more
some
of
other
these.
time.
We'll do these more
What's that?
next time. Pardon me?
Yeah. It doesn't matter. I mean, we could talk about long cuts forever. So
Yeah, long boxes, long cuts. All right. So
Okay.
thanks, Brooks. Hello, San Francisco. I love you. I
Hello.
miss you. And we'll see you next time. Mazzy loves you.